Cole Bennett stood at the window of his cabin and watched the stars slide past. He was 52 years old, with gray at his temples and lines around his eyes from years of difficult conversations. For 23 years, he had served as Earth's ambassador to alien worlds. He had spoken with creatures that glowed in the dark to share their thoughts. He had sat in silence with beings who found words insulting. He had negotiated with minds that stretched across thousands of bodies, all thinking as one. But today was different. Today, he was going to meet the Volanthi. The Volanthi Dominion was old, very old. They had been traveling between stars when humans were still learning to make fire. They controlled 47 star systems, and looked down on younger species the way a grandfather might look at a crawling baby. For centuries, they had ignored humanity completely. Humans were too new, too small, too unimportant. Then came the border skirmish. A Volanthi patrol had attacked a human mining colony, thinking it would be easy. They were wrong. The humans fought back hard, destroyed 2 Volanthi ships, and held their ground until reinforcements arrived. The Volanthi were not hurt badly, but they were surprised. They had not expected the little humans to have teeth. After that, the Volanthi Emperor agreed to open trade talks. Not because he respected humans, but because he was curious about them, and perhaps a little worried. Cole's ship, the Horizon, was small compared to the Volanthi royal vessel. As they approached, Cole felt his breath catch in his throat. The alien ship was made of crystal that seemed to be alive. It glowed with soft inner light, and it was the size of a small moon. Towers and spires rose from its surface. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Ambassador, Lieutenant Amy Marsh appeared at his side. She was young, only 28, with sharp eyes and a quick mind. She served as his aide and had proven herself many times over. "We're ready to dock." Cole nodded. "Let's not keep them waiting." The human delegation was small, just 4 people. Cole led the way, followed by Amy and 2 security officers. Sergeant Pete Harmon was a big man with a calm face and steady hands. Corporal Danny Liu was smaller but faster, his eyes always moving, always watching. They walked through a tunnel of light and stepped onto the Volanthi ship. The air was cold and smelled like metal and flowers mixed together. The walls were made of the same living crystal as the outside, and they hummed softly as the humans passed. Volanthi guards stood along the corridor, each one nearly 8 feet tall. Their skin was covered in blue scales that shimmered in the light. Their faces showed no expression, but their golden eyes followed the humans with sharp attention. Nobody spoke. The only sounds were the soft hum of the crystal walls and the footsteps of the delegation. They walked for what felt like a very long time. The corridors twisted and turned, rising and falling like the ship was breathing. Finally, they reached a massive door that opened without a sound. The throne room beyond was enormous. The ceiling rose so high that it disappeared into shadow. Crystal pillars lined the walls, each one carved with images of Volanthi history. At the far end of the room, on a throne made of pure white crystal, sat the Emperor. Emperor Kethval was ancient. His scales had turned silver with age, and his movements were slow and careful. But his eyes were still sharp, still intelligent, still dangerous. He had ruled the Dominion for over 300 years, and he had not done so by being weak. Beside the throne stood a younger Volanthi. This one was tall and strong, his scales a deep blue that almost looked black. He wore armor made of crystal that caught the light like fire. His golden eyes burned with something that Cole recognized immediately: contempt. This was Prince Kethron, the Emperor's youngest son. He was 19 cycles old by Volanthi counting, which made him roughly equal to a human in his early 20s. He was young, proud, and had never known failure in his life. Cole approached the throne and stopped at the proper distance. He bowed his head slightly, a gesture of respect, but not submission. "Emperor Kethval," he said, his voice calm and clear, "I am Ambassador Cole Bennett of the United Earth Council. I thank you for receiving us." The Emperor studied him for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice deep and rumbling like distant thunder. A translation device turned his words into English. "Ambassador Bennett, your kind has surprised us. We did not expect such resistance from so young a species. Humanity has a long history of surprising those who underestimate us," Cole replied. The Emperor made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Indeed. Let us see if you can surprise us further. We will hear your proposals." The negotiations began. Cole presented Earth's terms clearly and carefully. Trade routes that would benefit both sides, technology exchanges that would help both species, scientific cooperation that could advance everyone's understanding of the universe. The Emperor listened with interest. He asked intelligent questions. He raised concerns that were fair and reasonable. Cole began to feel hopeful. Perhaps humans and Valanthi could find common ground. Then Prince Kethron stepped forward. "Father," the young prince said, his voice sharp and cold, "may I speak?" The Emperor raised a hand in permission. The prince turned to face the humans, and Cole saw the hatred in his eyes. This was not simple dislike. This was something deeper, something uglier. The prince looked at them the way one might look at insects crawling across a table. "I have been listening to these creatures," Kethron said, "and I find myself confused." "Oh?" The Emperor's voice was neutral. "Yes, father. I am confused as to why we are wasting our time." The prince began to walk toward the human delegation, his armored boots clicking against the crystal floor. "These beings crawled out of mud less than 1,000,000 years ago. They have been traveling between stars for barely 2 centuries. 2 centuries, father. The Valanthi were building empires when their ancestors were painting pictures on cave walls." Cole remained still. His face showed nothing. Beside him, he felt Amy tense, but she stayed silent. The prince stopped directly in front of Cole and looked down at him. The Valanthi was more than 2 feet taller than the human, and he used every inch of that height. "Look at them," Kethron said, his voice dripping with disgust. "So small, so soft, so fragile. Their lives are over almost before they begin. They live for what, 80 years? 100? By the time a Valanthi has finished his education, 3 generations of these creatures have lived and died." He leaned closer, his face just inches from Cole's. "You are not our equals, human. You are not even close. You are pets, amusing perhaps, but pets nonetheless." Cole looked up at the prince. His heart was beating faster, but his face remained calm. "And pets," the prince whispered, "should know their place." The throne room fell completely silent. Every eye was on the human ambassador, waiting to see what he would do. Cole looked at the prince for a long moment. He looked at the contempt in those golden eyes. He looked at the sneer on that scaled face. Then, without saying a single word, he turned around and walked toward the exit. "Ambassador?" Amy's voice was barely a whisper. "We're leaving," Cole said quietly. "All of us, now." The entire human delegation followed him out. The massive doors closed behind them with a soft sound. In the throne room, Prince Kethron smiled. He had won. He did not know yet how wrong he was. The Valanthi waited for the humans to come back. They expected anger. They expected demands. They expected the small, soft creatures to return within hours, their pride wounded, but their need for Valanthi trade stronger than their hurt feelings. That was how it always worked with younger species. They would make noise, they would complain, and then they would accept their place in the order of things. But the humans did not come back. The first day passed in silence. The human ship, the Horizon, remained docked at the royal vessel. No messages came, no requests for meetings, nothing. Prince Kethron laughed when he heard this. "They are sulking," he told his father, "like children who did not get what they wanted. Give them time. They will come crawling back." The emperor said nothing. He simply watched and waited. On the second day, the Horizon undocked. It moved away from the royal vessel slowly, its engines glowing softly in the darkness of space. Still, no communication. Still, no messages. The ship simply turned and flew away. The Volanthi court sent a message asking if the humans wished to continue negotiations. There was no reply. They sent another message, offering to discuss the prince's words. Again, no reply. A third message suggested that perhaps there had been a misunderstanding. Silence. The Horizon reached the edge of Volanthi space and jumped to faster-than-light travel. It vanished in a flash of light, and then it was gone. Ambassador Cole Bennett returned to Earth and submitted his report to the United Council. The document was short and direct. He described the negotiations, the prince's insult, and his decision to leave. At the end, he wrote a single recommendation: complete cessation of all contact with the Volanthi Dominion until further notice. The council discussed the matter for 3 days. There were arguments on both sides. Some said that trade with the Volanthi was too valuable to give up over a few rude words. Others said that accepting such treatment would make humanity look weak in the eyes of the galaxy. In the end, the vote was not even close. 87% agreed with the ambassador's recommendation. Humanity turned its back on the Volanthi. It did not happen all at once. There were no angry announcements, no declarations of broken friendship. Instead, things simply stopped. Trade negotiations were cancelled. Scientific exchange programs were ended. A joint mission to explore a distant nebula was quietly dissolved. Human ships that had been planning to pass through Volanthi space changed their routes. A wall of silence rose between the two civilizations. At first, the Volanthi barely noticed. They were old and powerful, and the humans were new and small. What did it matter if the young species wanted to sulk in their corner of the galaxy? There were plenty of other trading partners. There were plenty of other species eager to work with the great Volanthi Dominion. But as months passed, small problems began to appear. Human medical technology had been advancing rapidly. A new treatment for a disease that affected several species, including the Volanthi, had been developed on Earth. The Volanthi expected to receive it through normal channels. But normal channels no longer existed. The treatment was shared with every other species in the region, but not with the Volanthi. A Volanthi merchant fleet needed to pass through a sector where human patrol ships operated. In the past, this had never been a problem. Now, the human ships did not attack or threaten anyone. They simply did not respond to any communication. They did not help when the merchant fleet ran into technical problems. They did not share navigation data. They did not exist as far as the Volanthi were concerned. Worse still, other species began to notice. The galaxy watched as humanity quietly withdrew from everything Volanthi. There were no explanations given to outsiders. When asked, human diplomats would simply say that they were focusing their attention elsewhere. But rumors spread. Stories were told in trading posts and diplomatic halls throughout the galaxy. The Volanthi had insulted humanity, and humanity had walked away. Some species found this amusing, the proud Volanthi, snubbed by the young newcomers. But others saw something else. They saw a species that could not be bullied. They saw a species that valued its dignity more than its profits. They saw a species worth respecting. Human influence grew. New alliances were formed. New trade agreements were signed. while the Volanthi sat in their crystal palaces and waited for the humans to apologize. The humans were busy making friends with everyone else. 2 years after the incident, a Volanthi ambassador named Vethrai requested a private meeting with Emperor Kethval. Vethrai was old for a Volanthi, nearly 500 years. He had served the throne for most of his life, and he had seen many things. He had warned against letting the prince speak during the negotiations, but his warning had been ignored. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing low, "I bring troubling news." The emperor sat on his crystal throne, looking older and more tired than he had 2 years ago. "Speak." "The humans have signed a mutual defense treaty with the Korath Federation." The emperor's golden eyes widened slightly. The Korath were powerful, nearly as old as the Volanthi themselves. For them to ally with the young humans was significant. "There is more," Vethrai continued. "The humans have also begun sharing their medical technology with the Korath, the Mendari, and the Yaith Collective. Our requests for the same technology continue to be ignored." "The humans are spiteful," Prince Kethron said from his place beside the throne. He had been listening in silence, but now his voice was sharp with anger. "They refuse to share because they are petty and small-minded." Vethrai looked at the prince with tired eyes. "With respect, Your Highness, they share freely with everyone except us. That is not spite. That is a deliberate choice." "What would you have me do?" the emperor asked. "Apologize? To mayflies?" "I would have you consider," Vethrai said carefully, "that these mayflies have done something no species has done in 300 years. They have made the Volanthi Dominion irrelevant." Silence filled the throne room. "We are not irrelevant," Kethron hissed. "Are we not?" Vethrai turned to face the prince fully. "When was the last time a species sought our alliance? When was the last time our trade ships were welcomed instead of merely tolerated? When was the last time anyone cared what the Volanthi thought about anything?" The prince stepped forward, his hand moving toward his weapon. "You dare speak to me this way?" "I dare because someone must," Vethrai said, not backing down. "You insulted those humans because you thought they were beneath you. You called them pets. And now they have shown the entire galaxy that they do not need us. We need them." "Enough," the emperor said, his voice heavy. "Ambassador Vethrai, what do you suggest?" The old diplomat lowered his head. "We must reach out to them. We must ask to reopen communications. And if they agree, we must treat them with respect." "We will not beg," Kethron said. "Then we will continue to be ignored," Vethrai replied simply. "The choice is ours." 3 years later, the choice would be made for them. Because the Kethric swarm was coming. And when it arrived, the Volanthi would learn just how alone they truly were. The Kethrics came from the center of the galaxy, from places where no light escaped and no life should exist. Nobody knew where they came from originally. Nobody knew why they traveled. All anyone knew was what they did. They ate everything. The first warning came from a distant Volanthi colony at the edge of explored space. The message was short and filled with static. "Strange ships. Millions of them. They look like insects. They are attacking. Send help." Then the message ended, and the colony was gone. Emperor Kethval sent his fleet to investigate. 40 ships, the best the Dominion had to offer. They found nothing but ruins. The colony world had been stripped bare. Not just the buildings or the people, but everything. The atmosphere, the water, the very soil had been eaten away, leaving nothing but dead rock floating in space. Of the 40 ships sent to investigate, only 3 returned. The others were destroyed by the swarm. Now the Volanthi understood what they were facing. The Kethrics were not soldiers or conquerors. They were locusts on a scale that defied imagination. Each form ship was small, barely larger than a human fighter craft, but there were billions of them. They moved through space like a living cloud, consuming everything in their path. Planets, moons, ships, stations. Nothing was too large, and nothing was too small. They ate metal, and rock, and flesh, with equal hunger. And at the center of each swarm was the Queen. The Queen ship was massive, a twisted thing of black metal and pulsing organic matter. It controlled the swarm through signals that no other species could understand. Kill the Queen, and the swarm would fall into chaos. But reaching the Queen meant fighting through billions of drone ships first. The Volanthi had never faced anything like this. Their crystal ships were beautiful and powerful, but they were not designed for this kind of war. They fought in formation, with honor, with rules that both sides agreed to follow. The Kethrix had no honor and no rules. They simply attacked, wave after wave, until their enemies were overwhelmed. Within the first month, 3 Volanthi systems fell. Emperor Kethval sent desperate calls for help to every species the Dominion had ever traded with. The responses were polite but firm. The Korath Federation expressed concern, but could not spare ships. The Mendari offered sympathy, but were too far away to help. The Yith Collective did not respond at all. They remember, Ambassador Vethrai said quietly during a council meeting. They remember how we treated them when they were young. And now, they choose to let us face this alone. Prince Kethron said, his voice hard. He was no longer the arrogant youth who had insulted the humans 5 years ago. War had changed him. He had fought in a dozen battles against the swarm, and he had watched good soldiers die screaming as the drones tore through their ships. His eyes were older now, haunted by things he could not forget. We have our fleet, we have our warriors, we will fight. And we will lose, Vethrai replied. Your Highness, I mean no disrespect to our brave fighters, but the mathematics are simple. We cannot win this war alone. 7 more systems fell over the next 6 months. Millions of Volanthi died. Refugees fled toward the core worlds, but the core worlds were running out of space and resources. The Dominion was dying, eaten away one system at a time. Finally, Emperor Kethval made a decision that cost him more than he would ever admit. Send an envoy to the humans, he said. Ask them for help. Prince Kethron's head snapped up. Father, no. After everything that happened, after what I said, they will laugh at us. Perhaps, the Emperor said, his voice tired. But Ambassador Vethrai is right. We cannot win alone, and the humans are the only species left that might still help us. Why would they help us? Kethron asked. We insulted them. We called them pets. We treated them like dirt beneath our feet. Why would they do anything for us now? The Emperor looked at his son with eyes full of sadness. Because, my son, I have been watching them for 5 years, and I have learned something about humans that you have not. What? They are better than us, the Emperor said simply. Not stronger, not smarter. They do not hold on to hate the way we do. They do not let pride destroy them the way we have let it destroy us. When they are hurt, they do not strike back. They simply walk away and build something new. He stood slowly, his old bones creaking. And when someone truly needs help, they give it, even to those who do not deserve it. Ambassador Vethrai traveled to human space aboard a small ship with no weapons and no guards. It took 3 weeks to reach Luna Station, humanity's largest outpost in their own system. He was met by human security officers who were polite but distant. They did not threaten him, they did not insult him, they simply escorted him to a conference room and asked him to wait. He waited for 6 hours. Finally, the door opened and a human walked in. Vethrai recognized him immediately. Cole Bennett, the ambassador who had walked out of the throne room 5 years ago without saying a word. Cole looked older now. His hair was completely gray, and the lines on his face had deepened. He wore a simple suit with no decorations or symbols of rank. He sat down across from Vethrai and studied the Volanthi with calm, unreadable eyes. "Ambassador Vethrai," Cole said, "I remember you. You were the one who opposed the prince's behavior." "I was," Vethrai said, "for all the good it did." "Why are you here?" Vethrai took a deep breath. "We are dying. The Ketheric swarm is consuming our systems one by one. Our fleet is shattered. Our people are fleeing. Within 2 cycles, the Dominion will cease to exist." Cole said nothing. "I am here to beg," Vethrai continued, his voice breaking slightly. "I am here to ask humanity for help. I know we do not deserve it. I know what we said and how we treated you. But our children are dying, Ambassador Bennett. Our entire civilization is being eaten alive." He lowered his head until his forehead touched the table. "Please," he whispered, "please help us." Silence filled the room. Vethrai kept his head down, waiting for the rejection he knew was coming. The humans had every right to refuse. They had every right to let the Volanthi die. It would be justice in a way. The proud empire brought low by its own arrogance. But when Cole Bennett finally spoke, his voice was not cold, it was not mocking, it was simply calm. "Raise your head, Ambassador." Vethrai looked up. Cole was leaning back in his chair, his fingers steepled in front of his face. "Where is Prince Kethron now?" "He commands our defensive fleet. He fights bravely. He has not stopped fighting since the war began." "Has he changed?" Vethrai hesitated. "He has grown. The war has taught him things that peace never could. But he is still proud. He still believes humans are inferior, though he no longer says it aloud." Cole nodded slowly. "Honest answer. I appreciate that." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the earth hanging in the blackness of space. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he spoke. "The Ketheric swarm is not just your problem, Ambassador. If they consume the Dominion, they will be stronger than ever. They will spread further. Eventually, they will reach human space, and then we will have to fight them anyway." He turned back to face Vethrai. "We will help you. Not because you asked, not because you deserve it. We will help you because that is what humans do. We help those who need it, even when they hate us for it." Vethrai felt tears burning in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you." Cole walked toward the door. "Don't thank me yet, Ambassador. Your prince is about to learn that accepting help from pets is harder than asking for it." The human fleet arrived in Volanthi space like thunder, rolling across an empty sky. 200 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel, in perfect formation, appearing where there had been nothing but darkness a moment before. They were not as beautiful as Volanthi vessels. They were not made of crystal that glowed with inner light. They were made of gray metal and hard angles, built for one purpose, and one purpose only: war. At the head of the fleet was the carrier Endurance, a massive ship, nearly 2 kilometers long. It carried 500 fighter craft in its belly, and enough weapons to crack a small moon in half. Its captain was a woman named Grace Kelly, 43 years old, with short dark hair and eyes that had seen too many battles to count. She stood on the bridge of her ship and watched the tactical display as the fleet took position. Ahead of them, in the Volanthi system of Kethvar, the swarm was gathering for another attack. Millions of drone ships swarmed around the queen vessel like flies around rotting meat. Volanthi defensive platforms were firing desperately, but they were being overwhelmed. "Communications," Captain Kelly said. "Open a channel to the Volanthi fleet commander." "Channel open, Captain." A moment later a face appeared on her screen. Blue scales, golden eyes, crystal armor that caught the light. Prince Kethron looked older than he had in the reports, his face scarred from battles past. His eyes were tired but still proud. "Human vessels," the prince said, his voice carefully controlled. "This is Prince Kethron of the Volanthi Dominion. You will coordinate with our fleet command and follow our tactical directives. Our commanders have centuries of experience. Captain Kelly smiled slightly. Negative. What? We are here to fight the swarm, not to follow orders from the guy who called us pets. She leaned forward in her chair. You do your thing, Your Highness. We will do ours. Before the prince could respond, she cut the channel. All ships, she announced over the fleet-wide communication. This is Captain Kelly. You know why we are here. You know what we are facing. The Valanthi treated us like dirt, and now they need our help. Some of you might be thinking this is a good time to remind them of that. She paused, letting her words sink in. Here's what I think. Those drone ships out there do not care who insulted whom 5 years ago. They do not care about pride or revenge or teaching anyone a lesson. They just eat. They eat everything and everyone, and they will not stop until they are destroyed. Her voice hardened. So forget about the past. Forget about what some arrogant prince said in a throne room far from here. Focus on the enemy in front of you. Fight like humans. Fight like your grandparents fought, and their grandparents before them. Fight like people who crawled out of caves and reached for the stars. She stood up. All ships, engage. The human fleet moved forward like a wave of steel and fire. The Kethrix had never faced humans before. They had consumed dozens of species across thousands of years, and they had grown confident in their methods. Swarm the enemy with numbers, overwhelm their defenses, consume them piece by piece. But humans were different. Human fighters screamed out of the Endurance's launch bays and dove straight into the swarm. They were small and fast, twisting and spinning in ways that seemed impossible. They did not fly in careful formations like the Valanthi. They flew like mad creatures, each pilot making their own decisions, reacting in milliseconds to threats that larger ships would never see. The drones tried to swarm them, but the human pilots were ready. They had trained for this. They had studied the swarm's tactics and found the weaknesses. Where the drones expected fear, they found anger. Where they expected retreat, they found attack. Plasma cannons tore through drone clusters. Missiles exploded in chains of fire that ripped holes in the swarm. Human pilots laughed and cursed and died, but they kept fighting, always fighting, never stopping. The larger ships followed behind, their heavy weapons turning the holes in the swarm into gaping wounds. The Endurance itself moved forward, its main cannons firing in steady rhythm, each shot destroying hundreds of drones at once. Prince Kethron watched from his command ship, his golden eyes wide with shock. He had fought the swarm for over a year. He had seen his people die by the thousands. He had watched helplessly as system after system fell. And in all that time, he had never seen anything like this. The humans were not just fighting. They were hunting. Your Highness, his tactical officer said, voice shaking. The human fleet has broken through the outer swarm. They are pushing toward the Queen ship. That is impossible, Kethron whispered. No one has ever reached the Queen. But the humans were reaching it now. On the bridge of the Endurance, Captain Kelly studied the tactical display with narrowed eyes. The Queen ship was visible now, a twisted mass of black metal and pulsing flesh at the center of the swarm. It was surrounded by a dense cloud of elite drones, larger and more dangerous than the others. We have a problem, her first officer said. Lieutenant Sam Brooks was a calm man who rarely showed emotion, but now his voice was tight with concern. Our fighters cannot break through that inner defense. It is too dense, and the swarm is starting to recover. They are pulling back to protect the Queen. Kelly nodded slowly. She had expected this. The swarm learned fast. Give them time, and they would adapt to human tactics. They needed to end this now. What if we did not try to break through? She said quietly. Brooks looked at her. Captain? The Endurance. Full speed, straight at the Queen ship. Brooks was silent for a moment. Then he understood. A ramming attack. Captain, the odds of survival are... I know what the odds are. Kelly stood up and looked around her bridge. These people had served with her for years. They trusted her with their lives. and now she was asking them to give those lives. "All hands," she announced over the ship's communication system. "This is the captain. I am ordering an immediate evacuation. All personnel to escape pods. You have 10 minutes. Alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Crew members rushed toward the escape pods, some running, some helping injured comrades. Kelly watched them go with pride burning in her chest. "Captain," Brooks said, "what about you?" "Someone has to steer," she replied. "The autopilot is not accurate enough for this." "Then I am staying too." She looked at him. "Sam, you cannot do this alone." He sat down at his console and began entering commands. "Besides, someone needs to keep you company on the way down." She smiled despite everything. "Stubborn fool." "Learned from the best, Captain." The last escape pod launched with 4 minutes to spare. On the bridge, only Captain Kelly and Lieutenant Brooks remained. The Endurance accelerated toward the Queen ship, its engines burning at maximum power. The elite drones attacked, but the carrier was too big and too fast. They scraped against its hull, tearing at its armor, but they could not stop it. Nothing could stop it now. Prince Kethron watched from his command ship as the human carrier drove straight into the heart of the swarm. He saw it smash through the inner defense ring. He saw it strike the Queen ship with an impact that seemed to shake the very fabric of space. Both ships exploded together in a ball of fire that lit up the entire system. When the light faded, the Queen was dead, and the swarm was dying with it. Drones that had been flying in perfect coordination suddenly began to crash into each other. Ships that had been attacking fell silent and drifted away. The swarm was not just defeated, it was broken. Prince Kethron stood in silence, watching the chaos spread through the enemy fleet. His hands were shaking. Two humans had sacrificed themselves to save his people. The same species he had called pets. The same species he had dismissed as worthless mayflies. For the first time in his life, Prince Kethron of the Valanthi Dominion felt ashamed. The battle was over, but Captain Grace Kelly was not dead. The escape pods from the Endurance had scattered across the system during the final moments of the fight. Human rescue ships gathered them one by one, pulling survivors from the wreckage and the darkness. Among those survivors, found drifting in a damaged life pod 3 hours after the Queen ship died, were Captain Kelly and Lieutenant Brooks. They were both badly injured. Kelly had a broken arm and burns across her face. Brooks had taken shrapnel to his leg and could barely walk. But they were alive. The rescue ship that found them belonged to the Valanthi. Prince Kethron had ordered every Valanthi vessel in the system to search for human survivors. He had done it without thinking, without asking permission from his father or his admirals. He had simply given the order, and no one had dared to question it. When the rescue ship returned with Captain Kelly aboard, the prince was waiting in the medical bay. Grace Kelly lay on a bed made of Valanthi crystal, softer than anything humans could build. Medical machines hummed around her, healing her wounds with technology that humanity was still decades away from developing. Her eyes were closed, but she was awake. She had refused to sleep until she knew how many of her people had survived. The answer was better than she had feared. Of the 1,200 crew members aboard the Endurance, over 1,100 had made it to the escape pods in time. Only a few dozen had died in the attack, most of them in the final moments when the drones breached the outer hull. It was a miracle by any measure. But Grace Kelly did not feel like celebrating. She heard heavy footsteps approaching her bed. Valanthi footsteps. She opened her eyes. Prince Kethron stood before her, still wearing his battle armor. His scales were dull with exhaustion, and his golden eyes carried a weight that had not been there before the war. He looked at her for a long moment, without speaking. Then slowly, the prince of the Valanthi Dominion lowered himself to one knee. Kelly stared at him. "What are you doing?" she asked. "I am doing what I should have done years ago," Kethron said. His voice was quiet, stripped of all its old arrogance. "I was wrong. I was young and stupid, and so blind that I could not see what was standing right in front of me." He looked up at her, and she saw something she had never expected to see in those alien eyes. Respect. "You are not pets," he said. "You are not mayflies. You are warriors, the bravest warriors I have ever seen. You came here to save people who had spat on you, who had mocked you, who had treated you like vermin. And when the moment came, you gave everything, your ship, your lives, everything." His voice cracked slightly. "I owe you my life, my people's lives, my entire civilization's survival. And I owe you an apology that I can never truly make right. But I am trying. I am trying." Grace Kelly looked down at the kneeling prince. She thought about all the humans who had died in this battle. She thought about the friends she had lost, the crew members who would never go home, the families who would receive news that would destroy their worlds. She thought about 5 years of silence, 5 years of being treated like nothing by these proud, ancient aliens. And then she reached out with her good hand. "Get up," she said. Kethron looked at her hand, then at her face. "Captain, we do not kneel to each other," she said. "That is not how this works." Slowly, carefully, the prince took her hand. She pulled, and he rose to his feet. "Then how does it work?" he asked. Grace Kelly smiled, even though it hurt. "We shake hands, we learn from our mistakes, and we move forward together." 3 months later, a ceremony was held on the Volanthi homeworld. Emperor Kethval himself presided over the signing of the Human Volanthi Alliance. It was the first true alliance the Volanthi had formed in over 2,000 years. They had always seen themselves as too old, too powerful, too important to stand as equals with younger species. But the war had changed them. The humans had changed them. Cole Bennett was there, representing Earth. He was 70 years old now, his hair white and his movements slow, but his eyes were still sharp. He signed the treaty with a steady hand, then stepped back and watched as Emperor Kethval did the same. Prince Kethron stood beside his father, no longer the angry young royal who had insulted humanity in that throne room long ago. He wore simple clothing instead of armor, and his face carried a calm that came from hard lessons learned. When the signing was complete, Kethron walked over to Cole. "Ambassador Bennett," the prince said, "I never apologized to you directly." Cole looked up at him. "No, you did not." "I am sorry." The words came out simply, without ceremony or excuses. "I was a fool. I judged your entire species based on my own ignorance, and I nearly destroyed both our peoples because of it." Cole studied the prince for a long moment. Then he nodded. "I forgive you," he said. "That is also how this works." 15 years after the war, Cole Bennett lay in a hospital bed on Earth, dying of old age. He was 94 years old, and his body had finally grown too tired to continue. One of his last visitors was Emperor Ketharin. The old prince, now ruler of the Volanthi Dominion, sat beside Cole's bed and looked at the frail human who had once walked out of a throne room rather than accept an insult. "You could have destroyed us," Ketharin said quietly. "When we were weak, when we came begging, you could have demanded anything. You could have made us pay for what I said. Why did you not?" Cole smiled, his weathered face creasing with memory. "Because that is not who we are," he said. "We are the species that crawled out of caves and reached for the stars. We are the mayflies who refused to accept that our short lives made us unimportant. We are the pets who turned out to have teeth." He reached out and took the Emperor's scaled hand. "But mostly," Cole said, "we are the people who learned a long time ago that the best revenge is not destruction. The best revenge is proving them wrong. It is being better than they expected. It is walking away from an insult, and then walking back to save them anyway. Kethron bowed his head. Tears, or something like tears, ran down his scaled face. "You are a remarkable species," he said. Cole Bennett laughed softly. It was a weak sound, barely more than a breath, but it was real. "Yeah," he said. "We know." He died 3 days later, peacefully, in his sleep. The Volanthi Empire declared a day of mourning. It was the first time, in their long history, that they had ever honored a human in such a way. But it would not be the last, because the universe had learned something important that day in the Kefvar system, when a single human ship drove itself into the heart of the swarm. Humanity was not just another species. They were not mayflies or pets or children playing at being adults. They were something new, something different, something that the galaxy had never seen before. They were the species that would help you even after you hurt them. They were the species that would die for strangers. They were the species that would forgive. And that, more than any weapon or any fleet, was what made them dangerous. Because you could fight an enemy, but you could not fight someone who refused to be your enemy. And humanity refused.